Hello everybody and welcome to Montgomery High School's next in a series of webinar presentations. And today we're going to talk to parents of students in grades 10 to let you know what you can expect coming down the road. I am Keith Glock. Along with me on the big screen is Matt Pogue, and waiting in the wings is Jessica Ritson. Let's address, you may want to throw that scroll on that screen for Matt so you can show everybody kind of what I'm talking about. If you are watching this embedded live into the Montgomery High School Guidance webpage, if you just click over to the actual YouTube page where the little button says watch in the top corner of the video, once you're on the actual YouTube page, there's a question bar that you can type in any questions that you have. And I've given this presentation a number of times at this point. And one of the things I know is that we have some good information here, but a lot of the time, parents of our grade 10 students just have a lot of questions. So we're going to try to get through what we have for you pretty quickly. And from there, then we'll be able to take some questions from you. And anything that Mrs. Ritson cannot answer online, she'll throw to us, and we'll give you an expansive answer best we can. All right. Mr. Pogue, take us to the PowerPoint, sir. There we go. All righty, so let's first introduce who our counselors are. And this is us. If you need to make an appointment, I would say for most of us, shooting us an email is probably the fastest way to accomplish what you need to get done. Okay. So students in grade 9, what have we already done? Through that freshman year, you know, in our department, we really believe strongly in making sure that your transition from upper middle school or wherever it is you were other than Montgomery to a freshman is a smooth one. And obviously, we want to challenge our students and make sure that they are, you know, kind of as focused as they can be in those core academic subjects, English and science and history and math. We also want to make sure that we're taking some time to get to know who the students are as they transition from grade 8 to grade 9. There's another piece of this that tends to get overlooked at times, and that's the advocacy piece. And I'm a big believer in self-advocacy. So a lot of the time, you know, we know that we don't expect students to conquer the world when they're 14 years old, but we want to get them as comfortable as they possibly can be in if something doesn't go right in class or their quiz grade isn't what they like. Rather than go home and have mom email a teacher or you know, just sit there and let nothing happen, well, how are we addressing that issue with the teacher? Did you go and speak with that teacher in person after school? Are they in your study hall? Can you just go up and talk to them there? And that person-to-person connection is something that, unfortunately, you know, not a ton of our students are super comfortable doing at that age. So it isn't an opportunity, you know, as we even extend now into sophomore year for students to set themselves apart you know, from their classmates in terms of just their communication skills. So that's one thing. And the last thing that we want to have them do is do something outside of the school day here at Montgomery. And whatever co-curricular activity that is, it can be, you know, a job. You could go work at Wawa. You can get involved in student council. You can get involved in athletics. Whatever it is that you know, you're interested in, do something. Even if it's just maybe you just come to some athletic events, that's fine too. But we definitely have data that tells us that our students who are involved in things outside of the academic day, that makes their academics go much smoother because they have, quite frankly, have less time to procrastinate.
All right, so I'm going to take it over for a little bit. I just kind of want to talk about taking challenging classes and what that's going to mean. So we're going to get into that a little more specifically a couple slides later, but we will address that. But one of the other things we really want sophomores to start doing is getting familiar with Naviance. Naviance is going to be one of those tools that they use a lot more frequently as they get, you know, a little bit more into junior year, but even still, there's things for them now. So one of the things we really want them to look at is the career inventory, just because not everything is about looking for, you know, a job or trying to figure out what do I need to do right now, but just figuring out more about who they are, because that can kind of give them insight into things that they like, things that they enjoy, things that they really may have a talent at that they didn't think, oh, I could turn this into something that I really, you know, make money from. So another thing we really want them to do is start those conversations with their counselor. because they may have ideas of what they think they want to do and they just want to bounce ideas off of someone. Luckily, they have a counselor that's there to do just that. So we really encourage them to do that, but we also want students to make sure that they're looking at their requirements as a 4-year requirement. We are not telling students to try and check off all the things they need for graduation this year. It is really important to look at, I need to fulfill my elective requirements, I need my certain years of math and science and English, but we're looking at this over 4 years, so nothing needs to change drastically right now to make sure that you're getting these things in. So another one of those things that's in Naviance that we really want the sophomores to take a look at is the Do What You Are. So in addition to the career inventory, there is one that's a little more focused on personality. So for the student that thinks that, oh, I've always studied by just looking at my notes one way, maybe you learn that you're more of a visual learner, and maybe you're a person that really is more hands-on. And we want them to kind of discover those things before they kind of get set in their ways and say, this is how things have to be done. So there's information that they can get, and it'll be a readout that's way more in-depth than I can tell you right now, but if they put in the answers and kind of describe themselves as best as they can, they're going to get some information that they can at least question and say, do I feel like this is accurate, or do I feel like this is something that, I'm not so sure if it got me right or not. And again, those conversations we can have with the counselors to make sure that we actually get something, that's going to start that conversation and continue it.
One of the cool things about that inventory that I really like is if the students just want to do it and get through it, and so they could say, Mom, you're right, I did it, Mom. If they just pick abacadabra and go up and down the list, they get to the end of that about 100-question survey, and the survey says to them, essentially, you look like you picked at random. You need to start over. So it's not just something that the system is intuitive enough to force them to actually pay a bit of attention.
Yeah, I think it understands the teenage brain a little bit.
That's good.
So that is going to kind of give you a little bit of a sense of what your personality type would be. But again, like we said, this may or may not be exactly spot on, but we want this to start a conversation because some of the things that you're going to do in your future could be related to those items. So just an example of somebody that really is numbers oriented and likes things to be perfectly set and has them being, things are done a certain way. There's an order, there's a schedule. If you're that type of person, we really might not want you trying to find something that's going to be, free flowing and, the rules kind of come and go and you set your own schedule. Those things may not be for you. And we want to help them discover that before they either end up in a major that isn't going to suit them or end up at a job that really doesn't work well for them.
So Matt had referenced taking challenging classes, and that is certainly something that we understand is paramount for a lot of folks, not only in our community, but anyone who's interested in taking the next step and moving on to college. But at times we can get lost in the race to the top, and what I mean by that is it seems like to us, having been here now, this is my 13th year at Montgomery, that it is just how fast can I get to the highest level courses, and the actual appropriateness of those selections be damned. I just get me faster and higher because that will be the thing that sets me apart. We have data. I promise you this. I'm not just sitting here making this up. That our philosophy of what level class can we put you in that you're going to get an 88 to a 93 in those classes. If we succeed in doing that, we have appropriately challenged you. If that means that those classes are all college prep classes, that is fine. Not only is it fine, it is more appropriate to about the 100th degree than us saying, well, you should probably take 3 or 4 honors classes this year because that's what I heard was the right thing to do. No, if you're going to get a 79 or even an 81 in those honors or AP classes, that's not as good in terms of what options will I have when I'm getting ready to leave high school as the student that just took all CP classes. Okay? The data shows us those very high Bs and low As are what colleges want. Now, we also recognize that we have familial relationships at home where, if this is your first time going through this process and you have a friend who has an older child who has now gone on to college, and maybe that child had the kind of success that you're hoping your child has. And we know that parents talk to each other because the conversations that I then have with parents are, oh, well, my friend whose son went to Princeton told me that we need to take 4 honors classes and probably at least 1 AP class. Well, that might be logistically true, but the part that that other family friend has left out is that that student did maybe take 3 honors classes and 2 AP classes, but they also probably got all 96s and 97s in those classes because maybe from a talent perspective, that student really is special. In the absence of that, if you are noticing things that you would, say are, oh man, I don't like that my child feels this way or that way, or they don't have time to socialize with their friends or attend any kind of after-school activities because all they're doing is working. And then even then, they don't seem happy. That's not really the space that we want them in because we know it's not where they're most productive, and we also understand that it's not really what's going to benefit them down the line. So we really have to marry up that how are we appropriately challenging the students with the amount of success that they can have. And I'll just talk quickly about the high school transcript because I know that that is something that many people are curious about, especially if this is your first child going through the high school. What exactly does a transcript look like? So let's show you that. This is a mock transcript that looks exactly like what we send to schools. So you'll see the name of the student there, and then top left is the freshman year grades, top right is sophomore year, bottom left is junior year, and bottom right is senior year grades. Below those senior year grades, you'll notice both a weighted and an unweighted grade point average. So the colleges will be able to see both of those numbers. It's not a game of hide and seek for us at all. We're very transparent with it. And one thing that is noticeably absent on our transcripts is standardized testing scores. It's not something that we have ever included in our transcripts, nor do I ever envision us including in transcripts because there are some logistical reasons like score choice and students being able to select which scores they want sent to colleges and omitting others, and the growing number of what we love, test optional colleges, where those schools aren't even requiring any kind of standardized testing scores in order to get in.
All right, so one of those things that is going to lead to success on the transcript is how you approach your studying. And I understand that students love to talk about how much they've studied and how long and all of the things that they've done. And in essence, yes, you're working hard, but we want students to work a lot smarter than they're working harder. Because if you're studying for 8 hours, something may be wrong. It really may be about how do you learn and how do you best actually approach, your studying. So if you're a student that really can't take the distractions of your phone, then we really need to think about getting rid of that distraction completely, because those 2-second glances at Snapchat or Instagram are going to distract you. You may lose the information that you had, and it's just not going to make you successful. So we want students to think about what are they actually doing when they're studying, how are they studying, where are they studying, and just thinking about those things.
So if I could tell you how many times we have students come into our offices and say they're telling us what they're doing, and well, I knew that I had this job to do, but I was playing Scrabble on my phone. It just was, that was the thing that I just couldn't help myself. I couldn't stop myself. It's one of those things we know exists with technology, and we're here to maybe help combat it. Being effective in class. Matt, how many times do we talk about this with kids when they say, well, what were you doing while the teacher was giving the PowerPoint? Well, I was hurrying up and writing down what was on the PowerPoint.
They were trying to perfectly grab every single word, which is good if that's what your goal is, but your goal is to understand the information, not necessarily just write it back down.
The other thing that we also understand is in the sharing of, this kind of technology that we have with, with the teachers. They a lot of the times provide the PowerPoint within Google Classroom. So why are we, even really kind of thinking about that would be the right thing to have our students do in terms of their focus? And it's certainly not. We would much rather the students engage rather than just, from a rote perspective, focus on exactly what's on the board. I mean, that doesn't really seem to make too much sense to us. So, and the other thing that, you and I talk all the time about talking to kids about not waiting till the last second to study. Reviewing that material kind of right as, as that teacher is done with it. So just food for thought out there for all the folks.
All right, so the other thing that comes up quite a bit is standardized testing, and there's a lot of rumors that come out about this, and there's things that people hear, and you have to have taken them by freshman year or you're doomed and nothing is going to go well, when in reality that's just not the truth. We want students to think about these standardized tests because yes, they are important, but at the same time there is a timeline to this that they can stick to and they're not behind. So freshman students really don't need to be thinking too much about this. They're in class, they're reading, they're doing math, they're already preparing by doing those things. As they get more into sophomore year, they have a chance to take the PSAT, which will give them an introduction to, okay, this is what the test looks like. This is what everybody's been talking about. So then they have an understanding of that test. And again, they are not behind if they haven't already gotten SAT scores to know exactly where they are. That preparation can help guide what they're studying and what they're looking into more. So we really encourage them to take that, but again, that doesn't necessarily need to be the main focus of that year.
Registering for that SAT, Matt, you just talked about it. The second bullet here on this slide, I continue to tell this story, because standardized testing is just a topic that comes up at almost on every webinar that we create, as well as just every presentation that we give. Parents are constantly asking about it. And I'm talking about parents of 7th, 8th, 9th graders. Going, well, when should my student start prepping for the SAT? And my answer is no time soon. We just did another exercise with the current junior class where the senior peer leaders had asked them, aren't you all really glad that you hurried up and have taken the SAT already? And then, the next logical question is, well, that's awesome. Where have you sent it? And our seniors are, laughing as they tell this to the juniors, because the first time that the seniors ever send their scores anywhere is like Halloween of their senior year. And yet there has been, for some reason, this perception that there has to be a race to take the SAT and have gotten it done already. When in reality, we understand that just being in school and high school makes you a bit of a more mature learner every day that you come and learn more. So your ability to critically read, your ability to understand different vocabulary, have gotten, root words, potentially from a foreign language class that helps you understand something better within that critical reading section of the standardized testing. I often ask the kids as juniors or seniors, what kind of learner do you remember yourself being 2 years ago versus the learner that you are today? And a lot of them snicker because they're very different people than they were 2 years ago. And 2 years ago is often when many of them were asked to take these standardized tests, and that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to us. So there is no rush to do this. So please, spring of junior year, that is great. March SAT, April ACT would be great. You could take one of those again in May. If you need SAT 2 subject tests, you can do those in June, and then you can do you still have August, September, October, all eligible for that early action November 1 deadline. So, you think about that number of administrations that you have, Matt, to be able to, to really get the score that you want down on paper, and yet we're still hurrying in 9th grade for some reason.
Yeah, the blank faces when that question was asked of where have you sent them that was pretty priceless, because there's no reason.
I always like it. Subject tests. I glossed over them a moment ago, talking about June potentially of the junior year. SAT 2 subject tests are not required for very many colleges at all in the country. Maybe the top 35 or 40 schools in the country are accepting or requiring rather the SAT 2s. And we usually mention June of junior year because a lot of the times the students who have taken APs, those are the students who end up applying to some of the schools that would require these tests. The SAT 2s, we always say, are a bit easier than the AP exams themselves. So if you've studied for, let's say, U.S. History 2 AP, you could go ahead and take that U.S. History SAT 2 and feel pretty confident about what you've studied.
All right, so there are a lot of different ways to prep for these tests, and again, just because you're prepping doesn't necessarily mean that you need to be taking the test 7 different times. You prepping and understanding, what the test will look like and figuring out how can I best study, where are my areas where I need to really strengthen, and where am I already successful, that information is going to be valuable, but doesn't necessarily, again, need to be the main focus of, well, I didn't get a perfect score on the math and I'm in a high math class, that needs to be the only thing that I do. Because again, the more you're in school, the more you're just involved in the math that you're doing, you're already helping yourself prep, but this additional stuff can help. And if you're looking to improve your scores, yes, there are options of ways that you can improve. I mean, there's some resources that are listed here, but there are a lot of other free resources online that you can find. There are also some classes that we have after school here at MHS. So if you're looking to get, some one-on-one attention, there is a possibility to get that here too. So if you have questions about that, talk to your counselor and we can give you more info.
So just some helpful hints. I cannot stress enough how important reading is. People that read well score well. It's just something that we know. In terms of becoming familiar with the test, take that PSAT in grades 10 and 11. No need to worry about going crazy outside of that. So if we, our general recommendation is PSAT in 10 and 11, prep in whatever way is feasible for you and your family, whether that's the free Khan Academy online preparation, whether that's the free Montgomery High School after school SAT prep, which is, for the folks who don't know that, we offer SAT prep all year long. It begins I believe the second week of school, and it ends right at the end of the school year. It's just like after school help. It is not a curriculum-based class, it's drop-in. So it could be a student who has taken it twice already and comes in and says, hey, I want to focus on my math for this time. And the teacher there will say, great, here's where we're going to start. It could be a student who has never prepped for the SAT before, and they say, well, I don't even know where to begin. And the teacher says, great, let's start over here. And then those students are given kind of an individualized plan to kind of meet whatever needs that they have. And honestly, the last part is, if you can afford the traditional prep classes, to go to a place with a couple of other students, once a week leading right up to the date of the administration, that is great. There's also a lot of virtual, online one-on-one test prep that's occurring now because it is 2019 and we understand that's a convenient way to do it. It's also the most expensive way to do it. So if that's something that your family can't afford, that's great. There's a ton of free ways to get this done. So that's kind of where we are. And I want to just throw it over to Mrs. Ritz and see if we have no questions over there right now. All right, well, I've learned better than to just completely sign off immediately. So we'll give you a minute or two if anybody's got anything that they want to know about that we hadn't gotten to in this presentation. And while we're doing this, shameless self-promotion is not off the table whatsoever. If you are a fan of Montgomery Athletics, we are about to head into basketball season. You can catch all of the Montgomery boys basketball action live on the Mire on mireradio.com. Mr. Pogue is our producer. Myself, Mr. Bartholomew, one of our track coaches and middle school teachers, will also be live with us, color commentating, and that'll be most Tuesdays and Thursdays throughout the season. Just check the boys basketball schedule and you'll be able to log on to the Mire, as we call it, and catch all that action live. Anything yet, Mrs. Ritson? Nothing? All right, folks. For Matt Pogue, I'm Keith Glock. Thanks for watching, parents of grade 10 students.